What do you do when your own staff won't let you through the front door? Silas Grant stood at the curb outside his family's 11th resort property, a suitcase in one hand and a fake ID in the other. He'd grown up watching his father build the company from nothing small lake cabins to full-scale luxury resorts across the country. When his dad passed 2 years ago, Silas inherited it all. He was a numbers guy, not a hotelier, but he was doing his best to keep things running. This resort, the newest one in Arizona, was already drawing complaints from guests. Nothing major, but enough to get under his skin. Long waits at check-in, staff brushing off guest requests, a few bad reviews online. His district manager, Carl, kept brushing it off. Opening pains, Carl had said. It'll settle. But Silas wasn't convinced. He hadn't met any of the frontline staff. The resort had been fast-tracked during COVID, so hiring had been handled by Carl and the site manager, a woman named Denise. Silas had signed off on the budget and blueprints, but he'd never even stepped foot on the property. That was about to change. He went full undercover, graying out his hair, trading his usual suit for cargo shorts and a faded tee, and growing out a scruffy beard. He booked a room online under a fake name, Robert Hale. His assistant helped him with the backstory, even made up a fake LinkedIn page for Robert. He looked like a retired contractor from Ohio, invisible. The plan was simple: spend 3 nights as a guest, walk the grounds, interact with staff. See everything firsthand. His Uber dropped him off at the front entrance. The place looked beautiful: high glass windows, desert landscaping, a fountain bubbling near the valet. But the energy felt cold. No one greeted him. No bellhop offered to help. Silas rolled his bag up to the front desk. 2 women stood behind it, both in uniform. One was typing furiously. The other, tall, early 30s, sharp jawline, looked directly at him, then turned to her coworker. "Do you see someone standing there?" she asked. The other woman didn't respond. Silas cleared his throat. "Hi, I've got a reservation, last name Hale." The tall one turned back to him with a thin smile. "Check-in's at 3, it's 1:40. "Right, I know, I just got here early. I thought maybe." She cut him off. "We don't do early check-ins unless you pay for it." "That's fine." We don't have rooms ready. Housekeeping's behind today, you'll have to wait." He blinked. "Okay, is there maybe a place I can put my bag down?" Or she pointed to a bench near the lobby's sliding doors. "You can sit over there, but don't hover at the desk." "We're busy." Silas stood there, stunned. There was no one else in line, no phone ringing. The other woman was scrolling on her phone now. He took a breath. "Is there a manager I can speak to?" "You can speak to me," she said. "I'm the front desk lead." "And I'm telling you, you'll have to wait." He hesitated. A week ago, he was in a boardroom reviewing expansion plans. Now he was being told to go sit like a misbehaving child in his own resort. "All right," he said slowly. "I'll wait." He wheeled his bag over to the bench and sat down. For the next 40 minutes, he watched. Guests came and went. The woman, her name tag read Heather, smiled politely with some, brushed off others. She seemed to pick and choose who got her best face. An older couple was told their room wasn't ready. Then 15 minutes later, a younger couple was checked in without issue. Silas took notes silently on his phone. He noticed something else too. A younger guy in a blazer, maybe 23, popped out from a hallway behind the desk a few times. Every time he made eye contact with Heather, she rolled her eyes or whispered something to the other woman. They all laughed. The guy looked exhausted but kept on working. At 3 sharp, Silas returned to the desk. This time, Heather didn't even look up. "I'm back," he said calmly. She sighed. "Did I call your name?" "No, but it's 3, Robert Hale." She tapped a few keys and handed him a keycard without a word. No explanation, no welcome, just a mechanical motion. Silas took the card and glanced at her. "Thanks." She didn't respond. He walked to the elevator, his heart pounding. Not from anger yet, but from disbelief. How did this happen? How had they hired someone like her to be the face of a luxury resort? When he got to his room, it was clean enough, but there was a smell like mildew from an old AC unit. The lamp by the bed didn't work. He sat down and pulled out his notebook. He'd only been there an hour, and already he'd seen enough to know something was wrong, but he wasn't leaving. Tomorrow, he'd start asking questions, quietly. He'd find out who that young guy in the blazer was. And he'd figure out how many other guests had been pushed aside like he just was. He wasn't here as Robert Hale anymore. He was here as the owner. The next morning, Silas left his room early, long before the breakfast rush. He wore the same faded clothes from the day before and a baseball cap pulled low. The lobby was quiet, just the faint hum of the air system and a couple of maintenance staff walking by with tool belts and radios. At the front desk, Heather wasn't there yet. Instead, a new face, a man in his 50s with silver-rimmed glasses and a calm demeanor, stood reviewing a binder, occasionally tapping notes on a tablet. Silas passed him by without slowing. He walked the grounds slowly. The landscaping was beautiful, but there were signs of neglect: sprinklers misaligned, a few dead plants left untrimmed, and a cracked tile near the pool that had been marked with a small orange cone. When he reached the breakfast area, he saw about a dozen guests already seated, most of them waiting, some checking their watches. A young woman in black slacks and a button-up shirt rushed from table to table. She looked barely 20, her ponytail whipping as she moved. She was the only one on the floor. "Thanks for your patience, kitchen's backed up," she said to an older couple. Her voice was gentle but strained. Silas sat by the window, unnoticed at first. After nearly 15 minutes, she finally made it to him. "Hi, sorry, we're short today." "I can get you coffee while you look at the menu." "That'd be great," Silas said. "You're doing this whole section by yourself?" Her smile was tight. "Whole dining room." Dishwasher called out. Host was reassigned to the front desk. "So yeah, what's your name?" "Lena," he nodded. "Thanks, Lena." "Coffee sounds perfect." She returned quickly with a mug and a small carafe. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured. "Is this normal?" Silas asked quietly. Being this short-staffed, she hesitated but gave a small nod. "Lately, yeah, usually 2 of us at least, sometimes 3. "Not this week." He didn't press her further, just placed his order and let her move on. As he waited, he watched the kitchen doors swing open and closed. Inside, he caught a glimpse of a sweaty man in chef whites shouting over the hiss of a stovetop. No one looked relaxed. There was tension in every movement. After breakfast, he stepped outside and made his way to the pool area. The sun was already high and the lounge chairs were half full. A single attendant was wiping down tables, moving slowly and favoring one leg. She looked exhausted. She didn't notice Silas. He wandered toward the spa wing. The hallway was dimly lit and the reception desk was unattended. A bell rested on the counter. He tapped it once. Nothing. He tapped it again. Still nothing. A minute later, a woman emerged from a side door, tugging on her uniform jacket. Her hair was wet at the roots, and there were faint red marks on her arms like she'd just finished scrubbing something. "Sorry," she said, catching her breath. "Had to clean a spill in the locker room." "What can I help you with?" "I was just curious about massage availability today." She flipped through a binder. "Earliest is 4 p.m. We had one therapist call out and another already booked. Only me left today." "You're both receptionist and therapist," she gave a tired laugh. "Today I am." He looked at her name tag. "Thanks, Lori, I'll think about it." She nodded and disappeared through the same door. Silas stayed there a moment longer, listening to the faint hum of the overhead lights. The spa wing was clearly understaffed, but no signs had been posted, and no one seemed to be managing the situation. Back in the main building, he spotted the young man in the blazer from the day before. He was kneeling beside a vending machine, trying to fix a jammed tray. His name tag read Eric Guest Services. "Need a hand?" Silas asked. Eric looked up, startled. "No, it's all right, just got a call about this thing. It's been eating bills." "Is this your usual job?" Eric stood and wiped his hands on his khakis. "Not really. I'm supposed to be guest experience, but I get pulled into maintenance, luggage, even deliveries. Whatever they need. Denise says we need to be flexible." "Do you get help?" "Sometimes. Depends who shows up. Some shifts, it's just me and front desk." Silas glanced toward the lobby. "And how's that working out?" Eric gave a quick glance over his shoulder, then lowered his voice. "Honestly, it's a mess. I've tried raising concerns, but Denise says we're still in the ramp-up phase. She doesn't really like people questioning her." "Have you worked here since opening?" "Yeah. Since week 1. I transferred from the Colorado property, thought this was going to be a promotion." "You regret it?" Eric hesitated. "I like the company, still believe in it, but this place doesn't feel like the others. Morale's low and we're losing good people." I trained 3 new hires last month, all gone within 2 weeks. Silas nodded slowly. Thanks for your honesty. Eric looked him over. You're not just a guest, are you? Why do you say that? You ask the kind of questions managers ask, but you're not from corporate. I'd know, Silas smiled faintly. Maybe I'm just curious. Eric didn't push further, just returned to his work. By noon, Silas had seen enough. He returned to his room briefly, changed into jeans and a button-down, and walked to the administrative wing. The door was propped open. Inside, Denise sat at a corner desk, scrolling on a tablet. Her office was pristine framed photos, fresh flowers, a bowl of candy on the credenza. She didn't look up. Silas knocked on the door frame. She glanced up. We're not doing interviews this week. You'll have to speak to HR. I'm not here for an interview. She leaned back. Then what? My name's Silas Grant. She blinked. I'm sorry, what? I own this resort. The silence that followed was heavy. Denise stood slowly, her face tightening. You were the guest at check-in yesterday. I was. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I've spent the last day walking the property. I've spoken with staff. I've seen how thin we are in every department. I've seen how people are being treated. I can explain. I'm not interested in excuses. I'm interested in accountability. She looked defensive now. We're short-staffed across the region. Everyone is. People don't want to work. That's not what I saw. I saw people working themselves into the ground. I saw frontline staff covering for broken systems and absent leadership. You have one person running the front desk who's openly hostile to guests. You've got a spa therapist playing janitor. And a guest services lead doing vending machine repairs. Denise crossed her arms. I've done what I can with what I've got. No, Silas said. You've done what's easiest. You've ignored problems, protected toxic behavior, and driven out the people trying to make this place work. She didn't respond. You're done here, Silas said. Effective immediately. I'll have HR process the paperwork. Denise's face flushed. You can't just walk in and I can and I have. She stared at him for a long moment, then grabbed her tablet and left the office without another word. Silas stood there alone, the weight of the moment catching up to him. He didn't feel triumphant, just focused. There was still a lot to fix. But at least now the rot had been exposed. He turned, walked down the hallway, and made his way back to the lobby. Heather was at the desk again, laughing with the other clerk. She turned as she saw him approach, her expression fading into confusion. You again? I'm Silas Grant, he said. Owner of this resort, you're relieved from duty. Gather your things and leave the property immediately. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. I've seen how you treat guests. You're finished. He turned away without another word and headed toward the break room where he knew Lena would be finishing her shift soon. There were people worth saving here, and he intended to start with them. Silas stood outside the break room, hands in his pockets, as voices drifted through the door. Inside, 2 employees were seated at a small table littered with half-eaten snacks and paper cups. Lena, the young server from breakfast, and Eric, the overstretched guest services lead. They were mid-conversation when he stepped in. Lena looked up first. Her eyes flashed with surprise, then concern. Are we in trouble? Not at all, Silas said. I need a few minutes of your time if that's all right. Eric leaned forward, arms resting on the table. We figured out who you were. After what happened in admin, word travels pretty fast. Silas pulled over a chair and sat down. I owe you both some transparency. I came here because too many things weren't adding up. I didn't want filtered reports. I needed to see what was really happening, how things feel on the floor. And now that I have, I'm staying until this place is back on track. Neither of them spoke. Eric's brow furrowed. Lena nervously folded a napkin in her lap. I let things drift too far, Silas continued. I thought if we built it right and hired smart, things would hold. But leadership isn't automatic, and what I saw yesterday and today, that's not the company my father built. Lena glanced at Eric, then back at Silas. What happens now? First, we stabilize. I've already started contacting regional support staff. We'll bring in temp teams from our other properties for the next 2 weeks. That should give everyone here breathing room. That'll help, Eric said. The burnout's real. People are quitting after 3 shifts. Second, Silas said, I'm going to need eyes on the ground I can trust. People who care. You two stood out. You didn't cut corners. You didn't blame others. You stepped up. Lena looked startled. I'm part-time. I wasn't even sure I'd be kept through the month. You will be, he said. Effective immediately, I'm offering you full-time with benefits. We'll cover your training to move into a service supervisor role if you're open to it. Her hands froze mid-fold. Seriously? Yes. You've been holding the dining room together solo. That says enough. She blinked fast but didn't respond. Silas turned to Eric. I'm promoting you to interim operations coordinator for the property. You'll report directly to me for the next 60 days. You'll help me rebuild this place department by department. Eric exhaled slowly. All right. But Denise won't like that. Denise is no longer employed here. Lena's eyes widened. She's gone, Silas nodded. As of this morning. Eric leaned back, quiet for a beat. That alone changes everything. There was a knock on the break room door. A short, stocky man in a faded maintenance shirt poked his head in. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Eric, vending machines down again. Guests asking. I'll take it, Silas said, standing. You've got more important things to handle now. Eric looked at him carefully. You know how to fix that thing? No, Silas admitted, but I can unplug it and put up a sign. Eric grinned faintly. Fair enough. Silas stepped into the hallway and made his way to the vending alcove. The machine had a handwritten note taped to it, use cash only. He unplugged it, added a printed out-of-order sign, then walked back through the lobby. Heather was gone. A new woman, older and soft-spoken, had taken her place behind the reception desk. She greeted a pair of incoming guests with a warm professionalism that immediately shifted the energy in the room. Silas approached the desk once the line cleared. You're new, he said. She nodded. Pulled from the Scottsdale location. Just got here an hour ago. I'm Joan. Appreciate you making the drive. We'll get you a room for the week, no commuting. Thank you, happy to help. Heard things were a bit unsettled, he nodded once. We're fixing it. As Silas headed toward the staff hallway, he passed the housekeeping board. A thin woman in her late 40s was pinning up room assignments. Her name tag read Greta, housekeeping lead. She glanced at him, then did a double take. You're the one who fired Denise. I am, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath all morning. Good, you've been here long, since just before opening. I transferred from Lakefield, thought this would be a step forward. Instead, I've been losing staff every week. We're down to 4 full-time cleaners for over 100 rooms. Why didn't anyone escalate that? I tried. Denise said I was exaggerating. When I sent Carl the numbers, she made me rewrite the email. Silas's jaw tightened. That ends today. We're bringing in support from 2 other properties. You'll have relief by tomorrow. In the meantime, tell me what you need most. Greta hesitated, then said, a linen tech, someone just to keep the carts stocked and laundry moving. We've been doing it ourselves and it adds hours. Done. Consider that the first hire I personally approve. She looked at him for a moment, then nodded. All right, let's get back to work. By late afternoon, the shift in mood across the property was noticeable. Word had spread. Staff who had grown quiet and wary were starting to speak up. A maintenance tech flagged Silas down outside the storage shed to report a water pressure issue. A concierge pulled him aside to suggest moving high-demand spa appointments to a priority waitlist. None of them acted like they were being watched. They acted like they were finally being heard. In the employee lounge, Silas found a whiteboard mounted on the far wall. It was blank. He grabbed a marker and wrote in large block letters, "We fix this together, starting now." Then underneath, "What's broken? What's missing? What needs to change?" He uncapped 3 different markers and left them on the tray. By dinner time, there were already 24 notes scribbled on the board, everything from better radios to more break time for overnight crew. One simply read, "Respect." Silas read each one carefully before heading back toward the kitchen, where he knew dinner service was about to begin. The chef Mark, a tall man with sleeves rolled to his elbows, was directing 2 junior cooks in rapid-fire preparation. The air smelled of seared steak and warm bread. "You've been flying solo back here," Silas said as the chef noticed him. Mark shrugged, not pausing his movements. "Doing what I can." "We lost 2 line cooks last week. One walked out mid-shift. We've got reinforcements coming. Until then, what do you need?" "Someone to wash dishes, for starters. I'm using prep staff to scrub pans." "I'll get you someone." Mark glanced over. You're serious, aren't you? Yes. For what it's worth, I almost quit yesterday. Stayed because Lena left me a sandwich after her shift. Didn't say anything, just left it. That kind of thing's rare around here. Silas nodded once. She's staying. And she's getting promoted. Mark grunted approvingly and went back to turning a pan. Silas left the kitchen and stepped outside into the cool evening air. The sun was dipping behind the hills, casting the pool deck in long shadows. A few guests were lounging by the fire pits. For the first time since he'd arrived, the resort felt calm, not perfect, not fixed, but steadier. Like the ground had stopped shifting, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number from memory. Silas, came the voice on the other end. Hey, Janet. I need you to take over Carl's region for the next 2 months, effective tonight. She didn't hesitate. Understood. I'll forward you the files. Start with this property. We've got a lot to undo. Copy that. Anything else? He paused. Yeah, don't tell Carl until after I've spoken to him myself. He ended the call and stood there a moment longer, watching the flames in the fire pit flicker. The resort hadn't failed because of slow systems or budget issues. It had failed because leadership had stopped listening. People like Lena and Eric had tried to fill the gaps, but they'd been left to do it alone. That was over now. Tomorrow, the rebuilding would begin in earnest. But tonight, for the first time since walking through the doors, Silas felt like he belonged here. By the following morning, the resort's rhythm had shifted. Not dramatically, nothing in real operations ever flipped overnight, but there was an unmistakable change in posture. Staff moved with a cautious optimism, not yet confident things would hold, but alert to the fact that someone had finally taken the wheel. Silas arrived just after dawn, stepping into the service corridor behind the kitchen. The air still held the scent of eggs from early prep. Mark, the head chef, was already plating family meal for kitchen staff, sleeves rolled up, moving at a steadier pace than the day before. A young man with headphones and a linen apron was elbow-deep in the dish, one of the temps flown in overnight from the Lake Tahoe property. They'd landed at 2 a.m., exhausted but willing. Silas didn't interrupt, just gave a nod and kept walking until he reached the employee lounge. The whiteboard he'd written on the night before had filled edge to edge. Better lighting in staff hallway. Can we fix locker room locks? Add second person to night audit. One note in smaller handwriting near the corner read, "Thank you for not pretending we're invisible." He took a photo of the board and walked to the operations office. Eric was already there, blazer traded for a black polo, seated in front of the property dashboard. Charts and reports were pulled up, color-coded by department. Room turnover times down 15% this morning, Eric said without looking up. Greta says the extra support showed up right at shift change. They're splitting floors instead of doubling up. Silas nodded. Good. Laundry, still behind, but they've got someone from Tucson arriving this afternoon. She's a senior linen manager. Volunteered to stay 3 nights. Silas pulled up a chair. You rested. Eric gave half a smile. I actually took a lunch break yesterday, first one in 2 weeks. Get used to it. They reviewed the updated staffing grid, then walked the property together. At the pool, a second attendant was scrubbing down lounge chairs. The cracked tile had been replaced, grout still fresh. A laminated sign read, "Caution, slippery while drying." At the bar, a new bartender from the San Diego property was training a local hire someone Greta had recommended after overhearing her in the break room talking guests through dinner options better than the concierge had. Everywhere they went, people were working, but the tension had softened. Not gone, but reduced to a manageable pressure. Silas didn't speak much. He let the work speak for itself. At mid-morning, he met with Joan at the front desk. She handed him a sheet of notes she'd compiled over her first full shift. Heather's absence has already cooled things down out here, she said. The desk team's figuring out how to work without the constant tension. He scanned the list. It was practical issues with the room key encoder, inconsistent communication from night audit to morning shift, and a request for access to the full occupancy forecast so the desk wasn't blind to last-minute group bookings. You good to stay through Sunday? He asked. I've already blocked the time. Happy to hold until you find someone permanent. He nodded and handed the sheet back. Let me know what you need. From there, he moved to the staff conference room where HR had set up temporary interviews. Lena was waiting outside, seated stiffly in a chair, a folder in her lap. She stood when she saw him. "I thought this was just paperwork," she said cautiously. "It is," Silas replied. "But I wanted to be the one to walk you through it." Inside, the HR rep handed her the contract and benefits summary. Silas let them review it together, only stepping in when she hesitated at the title. "Service supervisor," she read aloud. "Does that mean I manage people?" "Eventually, yes. But not tomorrow. You'll shadow one of our best trainers from Scottsdale next week. We'll give you time." She looked down at the packet again. "I didn't think I was the kind of person who gets offered this." "You are," Silas said. "You've already done the work. We're just giving the title to match." She nodded slowly, signing her name with steady hands. Later that afternoon, Silas made his way to the administrative wing for a scheduled video call with Carl. The screen blinked as Carl joined from his home office, dressed in a crisp button-up, unaware of what was coming. "Silas," Carl said, "I was just about to send you a follow-up on the Arizona reports. I know there have been a few hiccups, but Silas held up a hand." "Let's not do that," Carl's smile faltered. "Do what? Pretend there were just hiccups. I've spent the last 48 hours embedded in the property. I've seen the turnover, the burnout, the leadership vacuum. Denise manipulated reports. You ignored escalation attempts. And worse, you protected her when the problems were mounting." Carl's face stiffened. "You're basing this on 2 days of observation. I'm basing it on what I saw, what I heard, and what I confirmed with staff who had no reason to lie. You had a responsibility to escalate. You didn't. You're being reassigned." Carl's jaw clenched. "I've led that region for 4 years. You let a toxic manager run unchecked. You let frontline employees get crushed. That's not leadership. You'll retain your tenure and benefits, but you're out of operations." Carl sat in silence. Silas didn't wait for a reply. He ended the call and exhaled slowly. Back on the floor, Silas found Greta near the service entrance, directing carts for the incoming linen delivery. She looked up as he approached. "You were right," she said simply. "It was never about people not wanting to work. It was about how we were being led." He nodded. "We're restructuring from the ground up. I need someone to help onboard the new housekeeping hires. You interested? I'll do it, but I'm not cutting corners. If they're trained right. Exactly what I want." She turned back to the carts without another word. That was enough. By dusk, Silas stood on the second-floor balcony overlooking the property. The string lights along the pathways had just flickered on. Guests were beginning to fill the dining area again, and soft music played near the fire pits. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt steady, grounded. The resort wasn't fixed. It was recovering. The difference now was that the right people were being trusted to lead. Quietly competent employees were stepping into roles they'd never been given the chance to grow into. Those who had abused their positions were gone. No vague warnings, no probationary periods, just gone. The way it should be. As he turned to head inside, his phone vibrated. A message from Janet. "Just one line. Scottsdale team says Lena's name is already being passed around. They want to meet her." He smiled, not because it was a win, but because it meant the culture was shifting. Word was spreading, not about scandal or failure, but about someone worth noticing. Silas stepped into the elevator, watching the numbers climb. When the doors opened, he didn't head to his room. He walked straight to the employee lounge where the whiteboard still hung on the wall. He picked up the marker. Under the last note, he wrote, "Let's keep going."